Coming to you live from New York City is Sistah Talk. I'm your host, Dietra Kelsey. Across from me, I have my co-host, Shawn Seymour, a.k.a. Cappuccino.
Hey, Dietra.
How you doing?
What's going on, girl?
Nothing much. What's going on with you? What's been happening?
Oh, my gosh. A lot has been going on in politics. Ladies, we all know this past week, and I mean, from the signing of laws, from Governor Patterson to President Obama to the Shirley Sherrod story. I know we're all familiar with that. You know, the sister who was wrongfully accused and fired and then offered another position.
What was it, Monday? You know, this video came out in the afternoon. She was fired.
It just happened like wildfire.
Yeah,
a piece of the video.
A piece of it is the video. I don't even believe they did
this
that.
This is what she did. This is a video that she, a conference that she did at the NAACP. So the NAACP, you would think, would be aware of it in its entirety and not jump to conclusions. But they called it shameful, just like everyone else. And this just goes to show what I say all the time about the manipulation of the media and how it just, I mean, it should have been questioned just from the person that released the video. This guy has a very questionable past. This guy is the same person that went after Acorn and caused them to lose their funding.
You know something what's so odd about that? That they jumped to judgment so fast.
But why are you surprised? Is that,
Yes.
I mean,
No,
the
I'm surprised.
NAACP has given image awards to people like R. Kelly.
Well,
I mean,
I'm surprised because of a one day. It was just one day. The morning, 8 o'clock, the video came out on the internet that before 5 o'clock, on her way to work, she had to pull over and resign on her BlackBerry.
Yes.
The question I want to ask everybody on this panel is, if you're in a high-profile position and you were asked, if you were asked okay, we made a mistake, you can have your job back. Would you take it? You know, right now, because of the economy, I would. But go ahead. LaSean, I mean, not LaSean, I mean Shauna Marie, the Reverend. Go ahead, I shouldn't say that.
So you want to know if I would take the job back?
Yes. They already offered her another position.
Right,
It's supposed to be a better position?
It is. It's
working
more
with civil rights. Yeah.
It's a bigger scope of position based on the video that I saw.
Right.
And I mean, I appreciated her comment, which was that she has to think about it. I mean, she's not going to make the exact same mistake that they did, which was to make a decision without all of the information.
Right.
Right? Because they hadn't taken the time to even investigate where was this coming from, what's the full breadth of the video, and to do an investigation. They were like, you got to go, you got to go. Where's the car? Where are you? You have to go. So I think the same mistake is potentially there if you just take a job back. Like, oh, okay, we're sorry. No, let's figure out what happened, what went wrong, and what is this organization going to do differently in order to meet my needs as an employee and meet my concerns.
Well, she's a phenomenal woman. I mean,
she's graceful and amazing.
Her father was shot by a white farmer.
So there's really a lot of history there.
There's a lot of history
there. You know what,
there,
Monique, Dietra, I also wanted to say that, you know, put this in the context. Understand that, you know, in terms of duplicity.
We're going to roll a clip. After that, can you hold that thought? So you know what's so, ironic? Well, the question I have also, what should we do to the people who jump to judgment, such as Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack?
when you asked earlier, would you have taken your job back, I wouldn't have even resigned to begin with. I probably would have sought legal counsel and fought it. Because at that point, I would have realized I didn't do anything wrong. And just because they misunderstood something or they didn't pay the full clip, I have every right to fight for my job and to prove who I am. I mean, at this point, she did resign. Whether I would go back or not, I'd demand more money and a much higher position if I were to go back there. They couldn't give me any less. They'd have to give me much more.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Let's just assume for the record that what was on that video was actually accurate. What is wrong with redemption? If this is something that happened over 20 years ago. Robert C. Byrd, remember the longest running senator that just died recently, I believe at the age of 92. This man was a former member of the Ku Klux Klan. Rather, I should die 1,000 times and see Old Glory trampled in the dirt, never to rise again, than to see this beloved land of ours become degraded by the race mongrels, a throwback to the blackest specimen from the wilds. This is a quote from this man, and he said, and he also wanted to bring back the Ku Klux Klan. This man talked about redemption later in his life, and remember when he died, he was praised, you know, as a man who changed. So I'm saying, where is the fairness here, even if it was what it appeared to be? Because even General McChrystal, when he did what he did.
You take children to Egypt for free, don't you?
Yes, I'm actually leaving on Monday.
That's very good.
I'm pushing it because I think that's such a noble thing you do, taking the children to Egypt every year. Were you inspired at all by Dr. Ben, you know, also Egyptologist who
Of course.
Right, and talk about why it's important to take children to Egypt every year.
Well, for one, we do it through the African Genesis Institute, and the goal that we have set aside for ourselves is to make sure that our children know their African heritage and who they are, and to try to get back to the source, who we are as Kamites, people who were the first and people who were of a civilization that actually understood the order and the balance of the universe. And we try to talk to our students in a way that they understand that they were kings and queens, but they are also balanced individuals who need to be able to use that balance within the current day society and to not just think it's something that you read in a book. You know, we have too many illnesses that are out here right now, not just physical illnesses, but mental illnesses that I think can be altered by just your way of thinking, your way of life, who you are. Okay. And when we take these students on these trips, we teach them who they are. We teach them who the kings and queens are, and even just the everyday lives of people who lived in ancient Kemet and how it relates to them.
We're going to talk about that, mental illness and spirituality. But first, I wanted to ask you, Shana, you have media in ministry? Okay,
I do.
That's something really new for me. So is that something, to me, I'm thinking of a minister, a reverend, a preacher without a pulpit. Right now is the internet, television, and radio. So that's what you do.
Absolutely. So Healing Truth Center would be the ministry that I have, and it's a multimedia ministry. So I do an online radio show. I also do videos, and so that's one of the two ways that I engage with individuals is through online media.
One thing I wanted to ask you was, I checked out one of your videos, and one of your messages was that you are not here to tell you what God to pray for. You're here to assist that person in choosing their God. Am I right in saying that? Could you explain that?
Absolutely, sure. And as I'm hearing you ask the question back, I realize how that's fairly uncommon.
Okay.
But my understanding in ministry is less about telling people exactly what I believe and what I understand God to be, but instead in the tradition of spiritual education. And to educate is to bring out from within. So for me to tell someone this is exactly how life is when I'm also a student of life, a student of God, I feel is not necessarily my place. I can share resources, I can share ideas, and encourage individuals to think and get really clear about who and what God is to them. I mean, in a world, I'm sorry, love, but just in a world where there's so many different religions and so many different perspectives and cultures, I would be surprised if there was only one way to God, but probably many ways.
What's really interesting about you is that you weren't raised in the church.
Not at all.
That's kind of interesting to me because when I think of a minister, you know, I'm thinking of someone who was in church like 3 years old, 2 years old, 5 years old, and people go, that child is going to be a minister, they're going to grow up and do this and that. You didn't even attend church regularly. So how does someone that didn't go to church become a reverend?
I know. Well, it's honestly, it's been such a very interesting and also wonderful path for me. I'll share this parts of the story because it is a fairly long one because I've been here for a while. But the short version though is that my mom is here. My mom was always very open. My family's from the Caribbean, and when they came to the States and I was born, the idea was that she didn't want me to necessarily grow up in any one particular church. She wanted me to have the opportunity to explore and understand for myself. And she wasn't familiar with the church system in the States and things like that. And so I really had the freedom to explore with my different friends and family members, and there wasn't any regimented ideology. And the blessing is that, you know, over time, and I shared this story with you, there were times that I could not help but feel the presence and power of God as a kid and as an adult, and it was just very clear to me that I had more to do with what I felt and what I would hear in my quiet time.
Anika, you had the same background also, because you were raised in knowing Kemet,
No.
Okay.
My family's Baptist,
Mine too.
or I should
Yeah.
say Christian. We have non-denominational Christians in my family, and I always felt like I was the odd one in the family. I had to go to church kicking and screaming. I didn't feel like it was a place for me. I didn't understand why at the time.
Because y'all were the chosen ones. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, my mom used to get so frustrated with me because she's like, I have to save your soul. You have to do this. You have to do this.
Really?
You know, I remember asking my mom, well, what color is God? And, you know, who is he really? And why is he only a man? And, you know, she was like, you don't ask those questions. You just go to church and you go by faith. And I said, okay, I don't get it. So throughout my life, at one point, I felt that I was agnostic. I kept saying, well, I don't believe in anything in particular. I know something's there. I think I'm just spiritual. I don't have a real name for it. But I guess moving through high school and college, I started reading more. I found a love for reading mythology. I started off with Greek mythology, and then I realized it had come from something else. And I started studying ancient Egyptian Medu Neter, the ancient language. Started reading some of the myths of ancient Egyptian culture, and I said, you know, I'm starting to see something. I'm starting to click here, and it started to make sense. And then I didn't realize that you can actually live this legacy. And I started meeting people. It's almost like people started to come towards me at the time when I was most open, and I started questioning and being more curious, and I started learning about different societies that live this culture every day.
When I was at your Ankh ceremony, the priest said something about how will you, as a priestess, dispel the myth of your religion or the way of life. They are devil worshippers. They pagans. They idol statues, animals, and all that.
Christianity has its roots in ancient Kemetic society. No, we are not devil worshippers. We don't worship many idols. We're not polytheistic. There's a misconception because people have looked at images and taken those images and run with them and say, oh, well, they're worshiping these images. Whereas in most spiritual understandings, most faiths, there are images that you look at that give you a sense of your understanding of the world. They're metaphoric. You know, they're not something that you worship. I don't believe that there's a man walking around with a bird head, but I do understand Heru and Heru's place in my soul. I understand that Heru is a symbol, and it's something that is supposed to define an understanding for me. And that's what the Kemetic understanding is. You have symbols that try to relate to different parts of nature, to different parts of society. You know, I believe that the Creator is both man and woman. I believe that the Creator has many faculties, and people who are not familiar with the Kemetic understanding will say that those faculties are individual gods, when they're just faculties of one being.
Thank you, Shana Marie.
Thank you.
Anika, thank you so much. Thank you. I just want to say that you ladies are very inspirational to me. You're making me really, really delve into spirituality, Christianity, and Kemetics. Thank you.
Oh,
We
yeah.
need this show. So
Yes, we do.
This is very important. Thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you. This is Sistah Talk. I'm your host, Dietra Gay Kelsey. See us next time. Peace and love.